You can call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Jeremy Stephens takes on Mason Jones this Saturday on the main card of UFC Fight Night Des Moines, Iowa, and I can't wait for this fight. I think this is going to be a barn burner. Both these guys making their returns to the UFC. Jeremy Stephens, absolute legend in the UFC, getting up there in age, 38 years old, will be 39 in May. He's 5'9" with a 71-inch reach and a 29-21 record. So returning from a bare knuckle fighting championship where he went 3-0 recently, getting a TKO win over Eddie Alvarez, but hasn't fought in MMA since November 25th of 2022 in the PFL. Started out his career in the UFC back in 2007. So a 20-year pro in MMA, making his debut back in 2005. Been fighting since he was 18 years old, almost 40 years old. Just been getting after it. Fighting a murderer's row in the UFC before he left for PFL. If you look through his record, he's literally fought everyone. I feel like Frankie Edgar, Moicano, Renan Barao, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson, Jose Aldo, Zabit Magomedsharipov, if you know, you know. Yair Rodriguez twice, Calvin Kattar, Mateusz Gamrot, Natan Schulte in PFL. Like, tons of high-level experience from Jeremy Stephens. Never backs down from a fight, willing to take on anybody, anywhere. Gritty as hell, extremely powerful striker with tons of knockout power. Just tough as nails. Taking on Mason Jones, who's 30 years old, 5'10", with a 74-inch reach, so he'll have a 1-inch height and 3-inch reach advantage, which is going to be big in this one. So he was the Cage Warriors lightweight and welterweight champion back in the day before he made his debut in the UFC. Made his UFC debut against Mike Davis on short notice, lost that one, had a no contest with Alan Patrick, beat David Onama, which is a very good win to have in hindsight with how well he's doing, and then took another fight on short notice against Ludovic Klein and lost that one by decision. So since then went on a 4-fight winning streak in Cage Warriors and looked really, really good in his appearances. Very good striker, very dynamic on the feet with a lot of finishing potential. Just a very highly touted prospect, and I think he gets this one done. You know, Jeremy Stephens is an absolute dog, but he hasn't fought in MMA in 2.5 years. He has 1 win in his last 8 fights. You know, he's a very ferocious striker, but he's just getting up there in age, and he's taken a lot of damage in his career. And Mason Jones is just next level. He's just he's one of those guys that is going to be something in the UFC, just entering his prime. Got a lot of high-level experience underneath him. He's extremely good everywhere. He's going to be younger, bigger, more well-rounded. He's going to have the reach advantage, has the momentum with the 4-fight winning streak. I just think he's going to be too much for Jeremy Stephens, who's going to have a lot of pressure on him coming back into the UFC at such a late age with, not a lot of momentum behind him. Hasn't been doing MMA or training it for who knows how long, maybe several years, taking on an absolute killer in Mason Jones, who I think they're really trying to build Mason Jones in the UFC, and I feel like they're kind of just using Jeremy Stephens as a springboard for him to kind of get a big name out of it in his UFC debut. I think they're going to go toe-to-toe and go to war, but I do see Mason Jones getting the win in this one. I think he can finish Jeremy Stephens on the feet, who is tough as nails, but again, just rusty. That toughness, that grit, that chin eventually go, and I feel like Mason Jones is just an awful person to make your return against, given the circumstances of being out of the game for forever. So I'm going to go with Mason Jones to get this one done by finish within the distance. Thanks.